Since January 1st, every man in Germany between the ages of 17 and 45 has needed permission from the military before leaving the country for more than 3 months. A semester abroad, a work assignment, a long holiday, all of them now require approval from a Bundeswehr career center. Almost nobody knew. The rule was buried in a military reform bill that the Bundestag passed in December 2025 with zero public debate. It took the Frankfurter Rundschau reporting on April 3rd, 2026 to surface what both Parliament and the media had missed. Here's what this means for German nationals, dual citizens, and anyone planning to leave Germany for an extended period. Under the amended Conscription Act, Wehrpflichtgesetz, Section 3, Paragraph 2, any male who has reached the age of 17 must obtain permission from his assigned Bundeswehr career center before leaving Germany for longer than 3 months. The same obligation applies if you're extending an approved stay abroad or if a shorter trip crosses the 3-month mark. Now, an exit permission rule already existed in the old law, but it only applied during a declared state of tension or defense, triggered under Articles 80A and 115A of Germany's Basic Law. What the December reform changed was a single clause in Section 2 that pulled the exit permission requirement into ordinary peacetime. The odd part is that the law says permission is to be granted for any period during which the individual is not subject to conscription. Refusal is only permitted where denial would not cause particular hardship for the applicant. So, in practical terms, the Bundeswehr has no legal basis to say no. But you still have to ask. Men who already live permanently abroad and have established their livelihood outside Germany are exempt. The requirement targets men who are resident in Germany and planning to leave temporarily. If you hold a German passport alongside any other nationality, you are not exempt. Section 1 of the Conscription Act defines those subject to military obligations as all men who are German within the meaning of the Basic Law. A second passport changes nothing. This matters more than it would have a few years ago. Germany's 2024 citizenship reform now permits dual nationality as a general rule, which means the number of men in the affected age bracket who hold more than one citizenship has grown. According to the Federal Statistic Office, roughly 1 in 6 German men born in 2008 already carries a second nationality. The new law anticipates this. Young men are now required to declare all other citizenships they hold in a mandatory readiness questionnaire introduced as part of the same reform package. The government's reasoning is that certain passport combinations may raise security considerations or could mean the individual faces conscription obligations in another country as well. No carve-out exists. A German-Turkish, German-American or German-Italian man living in Munich is subject to the same obligation as someone who holds only a German passport. If you're a dual national in Germany trying to understand how military obligations, tax residency and citizenship interact across jurisdictions, that's exactly the kind of cross-border complexity where a vetted professional helps. You can find, sort and contact specialists in any jurisdiction at imidaily.com. The Defense Ministry has confirmed the rule applies in peacetime. A spokeswoman described its purpose as creating a reliable and informative conscription register for use when needed, saying authorities must know who is stationed abroad for a longer period. But when asked what consequences a man would face for leaving without permission, the ministry gave no answer. It hasn't published an application process, a form, or any prolonged guidance for the millions of men now covered by the rule. Several men who proactively contacted Bundeswehr career centers received no clear instructions. The ministry acknowledged the provision's far-reaching implications and indicated it would develop regulations for exceptions, but conceded that a final process was not yet possible. So we have a law on the books, millions of men technically subject to it, and no infrastructure to comply with it. The law took effect on January 1st. By April 1st, any man who left Germany at the start of the year without applying for permission had crossed the 3-month threshold. Thousands of students on winter semester exchange programs, employees on international postings, and long-term travelers now find themselves in technical non-compliance with a rule they had never heard of. What happens to them? Officially unanswered. Heises Telepolis noted the same gap. The Bundeswehr can neither reject exit applications nor process them, leaving the legal obligation suspended between the statute book and operational reality. There is a provision worth paying attention to, though. Under Section 1, Paragraph 3 of the Conscription Act, a man who relocates abroad permanently without the required permission does not benefit from the dormancy clause that normally suspends military obligations for expatriates. His conscription status stays active. Whether Germany will actually invoke that provision against men who simply didn't know the rule existed is a question the government has chosen not to answer. This exit permission clause is one piece of a larger military build-up. Germany wants to grow the Bundeswehr from approximately 184,000 active troops to between 255,000 and 270,000 by 2035. Voluntary recruitment hasn't kept pace with that goal. Under the same reform package, all young men born from 2008 onward will receive a mandatory questionnaire when they turn 18, asking about their willingness and qualifications for military service. Women can complete the questionnaire voluntarily. Mandatory medical examinations will be reintroduced in phases, starting with volunteers in 2026 and expanding to all eligible men after that. If voluntary numbers fall short, the law provides a mechanism for the Bundestag to activate what's called needs-based conscription through separate legislation. Several defense experts who testified before the Bundestag expressed doubt that voluntarism alone would be enough, with one retired general calling the 2011 suspension of conscription a major strategic error. Two larger questions hover over this provision, and no branch of government has publicly addressed either one. The first is practical. Can the Bundeswehr actually handle millions of applications? Germany has approximately 20 million men in the 17 to 45 age bracket. Not all of them will travel abroad for more than 3 months in a given year, but the subset that does include students, internationally posted employees, and seasonal workers. The Bundeswehr's career centres were designed as recruitment offices. They haven't been resourced or structured for this. The second is legal. Germany's basic law guarantees freedom of movement under Article 11, including the right to choose your place of residence freely. Article 2 protects personal liberty more broadly, a peacetime requirement that conditions departure from the country on military approval, even when that approval is nominally automatic, sits uncomfortably with both provisions. A Norwegian commenter on the Jungfreiheit coverage made a useful comparison. Even during the height of the Cold War, Norway never required its conscription-age men to get advance permission before crossing the border. Notification after the fact was enough. The distinction between a permission requirement and a notification obligation is likely where any constitutional argument would centre. No legal challenge has been filed publicly so far. Frag den Staat, Germany's freedom of information platform, filed a formal request on March 25th, asking the Defence Ministry for all internal documents related to the implementation of the exit rule. The ministry has until April 28th to respond. You can find all the programmes that are open to German nationals and dual citizens on IMI's Programme Finder, where you can sort, filter and compare more than 275 residency and citizenship programmes in 140 countries. Germany's passport is one of the strongest in the world for visa-free access, and German nationals have long enjoyed near-frictionless international mobility. This rule introduces an asymmetry that didn't exist before. Inbound travel to Germany is unrestricted, while outbound travel for men under 45 now carries a bureaucratic precondition that amounts in formal terms to a state veto over extended absence. For German men who relocate abroad on extended work contracts, pursue study programs, or take up residence in another country while keeping German domicile, the provision adds a procedural step with no clear enforcement behind it. The practical constraint may turn out to be negligible, given the ministry's own admission that applications are generally to be granted. Whether it becomes something more depends on how Germany's security environment evolves and whether the Bundestag activates the conscription trigger that the law has quietly put in place. One last detail. Recognised conscientious objectors are not automatically exempt either. Under Section 24 of the Conscription Act, even men whose objection status has been formally established are still subject to military oversight, which means the exit permission obligation applies to them too. Germany isn't the only country making it harder to leave. Exit taxes are spreading, and if you're planning an international move, you need to know how they work before you trigger one. Check out the video on your screen now to learn which countries charge you for leaving and how to plan around them. If you want IMI's analysis in your inbox every week, subscribe to our free newsletter at imidaily.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so yet. See you in the next one.